Today's episode is brought to you by Freedom Project Academy. Looking for a K-12 classical online school built on Judeo-Christian values? FPA is enrolling now for the fall. Request your free information packet at freedomforschool.com. That's freedom, F-O-R, school.com.
It's time to get educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. This is the Dr. Duke Show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am Dr. Duke in the flesh, joined by the one and only Dave Fiorazo. Before we get started, please hit that share button so, we can share. All right. We start with a story out of the Southwest, Arizona. How about for a one-hit wonder from the 70s there, where Arizona lawmakers have just passed the most expansive school choice law in the country. Slow clap, Dave, slow clap. Yeah. And here was the story, right? So the Arizona legislature has done a remarkable thing. We're talking with Corey DeAngelis, who's a senior fellow at the American Federation for Children. Arizona is now the first state with a truly universal ESA program. Essentially, parents who apply for an ESA may direct about $7,000 to expenses like private schools and even homeschooling, educational therapy, and even tutoring as well. This is a remarkable thing, and we have a video to show you.
Yes, this is clearly the biggest victory when it comes to school choice in U.S. history. Arizona is now the gold standard for school choice, and they've now cemented themselves as the #1 state for educational freedom and supporting parental rights in education. As you said, every single family, regardless of income, will be able to take their kids' state-funded education dollars to the education provider of their choosing, whether that's a public school, private school, or home-based educational option.
My question when I see this is that it's only $7,000. I have to imagine that there's more money being spent per child in that system. Is that the full amount of the money, or is that just, because that sounds like voucher kind of money?
Yeah, the government-run schools spend over $10,000 per student per year in Arizona. This is the state portion of the total funding.
Got
it. The schools are funded state, locally, and federally. So the public schools get to keep some of the money, and they'll actually end up with higher per-pupil revenues and expenditures. So when the teachers unions say that this will defund the public schools, it actually kind of does the opposite. They benefit on a per-pupil basis. So this is a win-win.
So if I understand this right, the average student or parent, I should say, that wants to get their kid out of the government-run schools and choose some other school choice, they're going to get some of their tax dollars back that would normally go into education, Duke?
Yes, that's right. And this is, I think, the best program like it in the country. There's nothing like this yet. However, I still have one tiny complaint. That money, as you pointed out, Dave, that is their money. They shouldn't have to pay it only to have the government give it back. Because even in Arizona, did you see what happened? It takes $10,000 a year to educate, or more, to educate those kids. 7 goes to the mom and dad, and 3 goes to the public school, who's doing nothing.
Yeah, you're still paying money to educate someone else's kids with $3,000.
So you're giving them $3,000 for nothing. But still, this is the gold standard. And we have a lot of interesting stuff here, too. One of the reasons that more states don't have this in this country, or a serious attempt for this kind of school choice program, is because of rhino Republicans. Right? This is the problem. We find that there are a lot of Republican governors who are unwilling to get on the wrong side of the public teachers unions. A lot of these rhino Republicans who think that by funding other forms of education that actually work, that somehow the public schools are going to lose out. And if that's going on, we're going to have a problem, right? We learned that, quote, public pressure alone, we learned from Corey DeAngelis, wasn't enough to pass the ESA in Arizona. In other words, well-meaning Republicans who care about their local public schools and sympathize with their opposition, rural lawmakers worried about how it impacts their districts. Arizona showed lawmakers the data. Well, they actually did something smart. They sat the rhinos down. Because you were never going to get the Democrats on board, right?
Yep, right.
But the rhinos that had to be convinced, the state of Arizona actually showed them the data. Though more than 250,000 students currently are eligible, only about 11,000 families are taking advantage. This is not only going to not hurt the public schools, as Glory said, they're going to get money there for doing absolutely less than they do now. So it's a win-win across the board.
Well, you can't say doing nothing. I just realized they are hyper-sexualizing the kids, and they're teaching them an unbiblical worldview. But this is interesting. You said something, I just want to clarify. Democrats are typically not remotely interested in this, but I thought they were pro-choice.
Well, not when it comes to the bodies of children. Right? Unless, of course, the children want to go ahead and change their gender. No, so you could actually defy science as a kid and change your gender, but you can't, when you're a Democrat, choose the school you go to. That's how that works. And this is also from the report, too. So this is something I think we need to point out. This is a quote from the report here. School choice opponents have been wrong for decades. Each advance is doggedly opposed because they know parents won't easily relinquish freedom once they get it. Cynically, each proposal will be opposed under the guise that past expansions are now sufficient. Give them a little taste, but not full. In Arizona, there isn't a politician of any stripe that would now dare publicly oppose open enrollment or charter schools. It's woven into the fabric. That's what we need. We need a culture of independence, a culture of liberty, a culture, if I may co-opt the left, as you just did, a culture of choice when it comes to how parents educate your kids, because this is the lesson, Dave. As Christians, we know this. Children are individuals made in the image of God. They are not cookie cutters. They're not all the same. They cannot all be educated under the same common, lowest common denominator education. You can't treat children like machines. The more opportunities and the more ways we have to diversify their education, the better off everyone's going to be.
With all the censorship taking place on social media platforms, we've made it easy to keep up with your favorite content. Simply download the Freedom Project Media app in your app store. Get access to 18 new videos a week, plus thousands of archived shows, lecture series, and educational animations. Download the Freedom Project Media app on your Apple TV, Roku, tablet, or phone, and make sure you allow for notifications to keep you informed.
Now, this next story is interesting. I say kudos to the University of Tennessee. They're launching an Institute of American Civics to combat ignorance of our country's founding principles. The Institute is expected to have a staff of nearly 60 people, and I say this is a great thing. It's going to promote civil discourse and constructive debate, and as part of his America at its Best agenda, Tennessee Governor Bill Lee allocated $6 million to establish the Institute. Quote, "In many states, colleges and universities have become centers of anti-American thought," understatement, leaving students not only ill-equipped, but confused. But in Tennessee, there is no reason why our institutions of higher learning can't be an exceptional part of America at its best. Lee said this when he first announced the Institute in January. So again, kudos, Duke. I know you have some thoughts on this.
Good old Rocky Top, USA, right? We did Arizona for the first one. Yeah. We're gonna have to sing each of the three stories here. But this is a good idea. My only codicil, my only worry is you're putting the university in charge of it. University of Tennessee launches an Institute for American Civics. Take every major university in this country. What is their attitude towards American civics? It is that America is a racist country, a sexist country, that everything is wrong about America. They hate the Electoral College. They think we're a democracy, not a republic. With all due respect to the University of Tennessee, I love the idea of coming up with an actual civics program. Mm-hmm. But is this going to be that way? And even if the state of Tennessee mandates and pays for this at the university, how do you guarantee the faculty are actually going to be fair-minded about this?
Boy, that's a good point.
When they are fair-minded about nothing else. I mean, once it gets into the hands of the faculty, however well-meaning, however accurate the civics are, I have watched my colleagues over the years as a professor take good curriculum, good books, and completely turn them inside out and make them tools of socialism, globalism, and all sorts of other anti-Americanism. They do it over and over again, and University of Tennessee, is no different from the rest.
That's a good point. I want to mention that Lee formalized a partnership. Now, this is great news with Hillsdale College to ensure that the Christian school's philosophies and teaching methods on civics education are brought to the Institute. There's a video on this. Check it out.
We are formalizing a partnership with Hillsdale to expand their approach to civics education and K-12 education in Tennessee. Informed patriotism should stretch beyond K-12 and into higher education. In many states, colleges and universities have become centers of anti-American thought, leaving students not only ill-equipped but confused. But in Tennessee, there is no reason why our institutions of higher learning can't be an exceptional part of America at its best. So I'm including in my budget $6 million to establish the Institute of American Civics at the University of Tennessee. This will be a flagship for the nation, a beacon celebrating intellectual diversity at our universities and teaching how responsible and civic-minded people strengthens our communities and strengthens our country.
Yeah, I don't want to be Debbie Downer, but I gotta be Debbie Downer as a 30-year professor at 7 different universities. I'm not in the belly of the beast. I'm in the belly of the parasite that lives in the belly of the beast. And there was one very noble. There you've got the State House and the governor. And over here you got Hillsdale College. Fantastic.
Yes.
But what's in between that you're paying no attention to is the faculty. Oh, they'll take your $6 million, Governor. Oh, no doubt about it. But how much of that $6 million goes to accurate civics? What are your fail-safes here? What are your protocols? How are you going to ensure this? It seems to me like you're writing a check, and then the faculty is going to cash that check and do exactly the opposite of what you want. How do you fix this?
Well, let's just say there are some teachers and professors in Tennessee that will follow their curriculum. Let's just say there are some. In those classes, I would think that there are some students that would come out of high school, get that taught to them, and they would be very confused based on what they were taught in high school.
Let me ask you another question. You're a typical progressive liberal historian in a university, which is like 99% of them. What do you think they're going to do when they're told that they have to use a model from a small private Christian college to teach civics? What do you think the average tenured professor, progressive radical at the University of Tennessee is going to say when you tell him, oh, you are partnering with a conservative Christian college to educate kids in Knoxville?
They'll laugh.
Yeah, they're going to laugh. They're going to tally up how much money they'll individually get from this $6 million, and they'll go right back to teaching a healthy dose of anti-American nonsense.
Today's show is sponsored by our friends at MyPillow. Save up to 66% on all items at MyPillow.com when you use the code Dr. Duke. That's DRDUKE. Support this show by supporting a great American company.
Okay, we're going to have to clarify this next one. It may be a little confusing. CUNY, which is the City University of New York, is launching a center to train students in social justice activism. I'm saying there, wait. They're already doing that in the government-run schools. They're already doing this, and most universities are already piling on top of that, making them more established in their social justice activism. I'm not sure about why it's a headline here, but 2 campuses in the City University of New York system will work together on an institute to train social justice activists in the leadership for democracy and social justice. So Duke, recruitment for the institute, are you ready? We'll focus on, quote, leaders who represent diverse communities, including people of color, women, LGBTQ plus leaders, and leaders from working class and low income backgrounds. There's your recruiting pool, Dr. Duke?
Everybody apparently, except for who? Cisgendered white men, right? And if you take a look at the picture that Mike had up there, that's the Colin Powell School, right? So you hit the nail on the head with this, Dave. We're at the stage in the socialist project, because this is an adjunct of socialism. We're at that stage now where they have such a stranglehold on our institutions, particularly education, that they are now magnifying and multiplying the very same thing, right? You said it. That what do you have to do this for when the vast majority of universities are structured to be agents for social justice, right? There was a critical race theory and all of this social justice activism. I remember when I started teaching at the university I'm at right now, 12 years ago. 12 years ago, there was no social justice classes. There was not a major or a minor. By the time I got there in 2008, within a year, they had a minor in social justice. As of a few years ago, now they have a major in social justice, and now with critical race theory, the entire humanities, all of the social studies, and about half of the hard sciences have been completely overrun by social justice activism. Why you need a center for it? I'll tell you why. Because the federal government is going to give you even more money as a university, particularly at this one, at CUNY. They call these CUNY schools, right? What's going to happen is that the federal government under Joe Biden is going to give much more money to schools who take what they're already doing and they make a center, right? And then that center is going to have offshoot centers, right? After you get the huge payoff from the federal government from creating this completely repetitive program, then you're going to have a branch for African Americans, and then for Hispanic Americans, and then for Asian Americans. And that's more money. This is that colonization that we see in the evolution of socialism. They have secured their ownership of our American education system. Now they're just repeating again and again and again more and more socialist ideas that look exactly like the other ones, getting more of our money to do so.
So in the news release from the university, it says, quote, "We're facing a series of interconnected crises from climate change to economic inequality and assaults on civil and human rights," LGBTQ+, right? And then other leaders have worked in left-leaning activist groups. No surprise here, Executive Director Jessica Brown is a former advocacy leader for who? Planned Parenthood. That's right. They're the ones that produced the social justice activists to try to intimidate Supreme Court justices and try to show up and pour blood, that looks like blood down the steps and have, looks like they're having their abortions, right? And by the way, she also ran an organization encouraging people to sign up under Obamacare. Now all these things are working together, Duke.
We've reached the point where the entire university system is nothing more than an adjunct to Black Lives Matter, to Planned Parenthood, to Antifa. Over and over and over again, our universities have been bought, sold, and colonized by all these organs of the progressive left, which are nothing but socialist organs. And that's why now it's bleeding down into our high school, middle, and elementary schools. They're about to completely sew up your kid's mind from 4 and 3 years old in preschool all the way through college. That's 27 years. There's no way your kids will come back from that if this is allowed to go unchecked, and no one's checking it.
That's right. All right, before we go, let's take a little time to fill you in on some other stories that we've been following. Let's start in a new study that finds U.S. colleges are losing students at a rapid pace. Duke, that might not be a bad thing. According to a National Student Clearinghouse Research Center report, college enrollment has dropped by nearly 1.3 million students in the past 2 years. It needs to be more. The report finds undergraduate students dropped by 9.4% and graduate students dropped 7.4%. Interestingly, Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Utah, and West Virginia saw an increase in enrollment this past spring, in part due to the state's number of online universities. Interesting. And undergraduate degrees for computer science and psychology saw the greatest demand, while all other fields either declined or stayed the same. Duke, your thoughts on about 1.3 million students choosing not to attend college?
It's about time. If I had to do my life over again, I would not have chosen this path of graduate school. It's a disaster. It's a complete and utter disaster. I mean, I would have been much more happy in retrospect becoming an engineer if I could have pulled the math off, or a carpenter, just something. Where look at how nobody in this country knows how to do those jobs anymore. I mean, if you try to call a contract out to your house, you're waiting, what, 6-7 weeks now to get somebody in there? We have a huge shortage, particularly for men, of those kind of skilled trades, which paid huge money. These kids don't belong in college. And what the progressive left has done has destroyed education. Rather than have multiple tracks, the idea that not every kid, and most kids don't need a 4-year degree from a university, funnel kids quicker into those trades where they could make a great living and actually contribute to manufacturing and creating housing and all that stuff here. We send them to these stupid liberal arts colleges. We waste 2 years of their 4 years in college on all these liberal arts colleges that have become the same social justice stuff. It's about time. The kids figured it out way before the educators did.
That's right. Well, speaking of higher learning, one girl is choosing to go to college, and she's paying her own way by, wait for it, naming a lot of Chinese babies. What? Bo Jessup is a 19-year-old with a knack for naming babies. In fact, she has made big money as the CEO of Special Name, a website designed to provide Chinese parents with culturally appropriate English names for their babies. In China, all babies are given a Chinese name consisting of 2 to 3 characters with a carefully constructed meaning. However, many Chinese people find it easier to interact with native English speakers if they also have a Western name. Now, Jessup's website asks users to choose 5 characteristics from a list of 12 that they would most like their child to embody. So an algorithm then selects 3 gender-specific names matched to those 5 characteristics. In the last 7 years, she has been paid, ready, $400,000 to name more than 677,000 Chinese babies. Finally, let's wrap things up with everyone's favorite satire site. We've picked our favorite Babylon Bee headlines to see which one should be crowned numero uno. Let's start with British Parliament forms July 4 commission to investigate colonial insurrection. I like that one. Next, Dick Cheney thrilled to no longer be least likable Cheney. Next, Biden disappointed to learn that pink hair doesn't smell like strawberry. Next, Fox Searchlight asks everyone to send in their DVD copies of Juno so they can update Ellen Page's name. And finally, SCOTUS restroom signs changed to gender neutral in preparation for Ketanji Brown Jackson arrival. Duke, I think there's 2 really good ones there, but pick your top one.
Far and away, the Dick Cheney one. Now, this is the same Dick Cheney who shot somebody in the face with a shotgun on a hunting expedition, and he's still 10 times more likely than that crazy daughter of his, who's about to be thankfully retired from Congress.
We would hope. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for this segment. More to come next time.
And that is going to do it for this show. For all of us at Freedom Project, stay educated, my friends.